Decarbonisation. It is my pleasure now to invite Dr. Deven Chhaya, Partner, Infrastructure Advisory, KPMG, to deliver the presentation. Dr. Chhaya, please.
A very good afternoon to all of you. I'll do the air stewardess first. Sir, madam, are you all in the right session? Energy efficiency? It's so heartening to see this attendance for this particular track. It only shows that we have come a long way from where we were a couple of years back. And one more disclaimer. I'm not going to talk about anything that you don't know. You yourselves are in the field or are interested in the field enough to have read a lot about what is happening. So my sharing is not going to be earth-shattering revelations, but just what COP28 did to all of us. And the reason why we are all here today in this great number is giving you a reminder that energy efficiency matters. It is something that we cannot take lightly. It is something that we have to depend on as one of the biggest levers in our decarbonization journey, which we can exercise ourselves and see for ourselves the results. And therefore, this particular session is important for us to know what exactly is possible within the energy efficiency scope. I'll just go through some numbers which are again not foreign to you, essentially giving the idea that we are going towards a level where we have seen umpteen changes happen across. In terms of energy usage, it has actually gone up significantly. We have seen electrification happen across many sectors, and that number is only increasing. We will see a lot more electricity demand that is going to come in very, very soon. One of the drivers, and we will discuss a few drivers in terms of the energy demand, but energy demand, we are all so used to seeing Teslas on the road now. It is becoming a big tool for us to electrify the mobility. However, it is also putting a lot of strain on our grid systems. So if you've seen lately, if you have seen a lot more SP grid works happening on the road and you've cursed SP for some time, please don't do it, because they are only improving the grid so that we all can be ICE free from 2030 onwards. Essentially, a lot more activity is happening in this space. So let's take a look at the efficiency portion itself. So we are looking at overall increase. It's almost doubled in terms of the actual activities that have happened and the actual savings that have been released due to energy efficiency. And this is a little dated data, but a very important one because it shows the progression before COP28. I didn't want to use a data point which is post COP28, and that's precisely why I've taken 22 as a benchmark. So it is not because of COP28 that we have seen this growth or we are seeing immense interest. It is something that we have been exploring as a key lever for decarbonization. The second one, which is also important, the point here is we would have had a 3 times increase in the energy demand. At the current rate of electrification that we are going through, we would have increased it by about 3 to 4%. However, energy demand overall, because of the energy efficiency activities put into place, has grown by just 1%. So you can imagine that the demand increasing, and because of efficiency, you are not putting too much of a strain on the grid, and that is a good thing for us all. A few other examples in terms of how various energy efficiency, not only at the core level of cooling, which is very prevalent in Singapore and this part of the world, but essentially all parts of the organizations are gearing up for reducing the load of energy. If you look at beyond what has been the three ambitions portrayed in our COP28, I'll just touch upon this very briefly, but more importantly, doubling the annual global average. Now, this is going to put a lot of stress on how we are going to actually make this happen. And thanks to what Vincent has just shared, it gives us hope that there are these projects which are happening, which are yielding enough financial returns to promoters, developers, to actually put in the money which is required to meet those goals of doubling the energy efficiency targets. One of the major points that is needed, and this is where the NEA's interest also lies. In fact, we were having various discussions with various other agencies, including NEA. And it seems like we have to look at energy efficiency as our first fuel. Every kilowatt that is not used is not produced. We need to look at this paradigm shift in terms of energy efficiency. If we do not look at it as an alternative fuel, we will always be in this cycle of identifying the various financial levers first. And then some projects may be successful, like Vincent's project, but some projects may not meet the requirement. And that's where we might struggle. I want to go into the three enablers which were proposed in COP28. And this is where it's definitely very important for us to ascertain where do we stand if we are to go into these various activities around energy efficiency. What are the supporting parameters that need to be in place? One, of course, is policy. If I can be proud of one aspect of the decarbonization journey that Singapore has embarked upon, is the clarity. And this is not my understanding, it is a global acceptance that Singapore is making the right policy initiatives, and that's becoming almost a template for the region and globe to consider, because these are the various parameters on which we can actually emphasize energy efficiency as one of the key levers. The Green Plan 2030 is an iconic plan. If we are not serious about meeting the 2030 plan, we may be derailed completely by 2045 when we are actually supposed to meet our net zero targets. So, it's important for policies to be in place for meeting our targets. And these policies could be carrot and stick, both. They could be incentives, which are available in multitudes. There could be the sticks, where essentially we are looking at carbon tax, and also reputational risks, which are included, because now it will become more and more important for high energy guzzlers to take effective action to meet those targets which they have been set. So that's really on the policy side. Collaboration. Not one party has all the solutions, and therefore collaboration is going to be the key on how we engage, how we deliver on our energy efficiency promise. Collaboration, I cannot stress this point more, and we have seen this across many of our projects where KPMG is involved. We have seen projects actually fail because collaboration with the ecosystem is not there. So we need all the parties to come together to meet these targets. It's not really a one-horse race here. Third is the financing lever. Again, thanks to Vincent, he has already touched upon the importance of financing. But the good news is that many of the energy efficiency projects are self-funding. An interesting project that we did with one of the institutes of higher learning, and that's in the public domain, has yielded a positive cash flow in the next 5 years. The business case is so strong for them to make that multi-million-dollar investment because it makes sense. So thankfully, we are not in the space where it's a completely new technology. We don't have any information about how the payback period is going to look like. We have a lot more handle on this aspect. Definitely more than the other aspects of technology that we are struggling with. So, in terms of meeting the targets of doubling the energy efficiency, we need to have 3 times the investment that is currently made available in energy efficiency. So you can imagine the kind of money that needs to come in, and therefore the panel that you will hear later is an important aspect of understanding where that financing is going to come and what are the financiers actually looking for when you put up these business cases for energy efficiency. Across the board, I have taken the example of ASEAN. I could have taken the example of the globe. 190 countries would have given you such numbers. The underlying factor is energy intensity. Underlying impact is energy efficiency. We are in a stage where governments, in order to meet their net zero targets, what they have committed in Paris, to meet those targets, they have to put up these numbers. They will have to achieve these numbers. And that's where we get a sense of where energy efficiency will be played in the next few years. 2045 to 2060 is the range of what the ASEAN countries have committed. And you can look at the numbers. They're all within this next 2 decades. In fact, some are 2025, very ambitious, but these are the ones which have actually gone ahead and said, we're going to reduce this. How is this going to happen? Energy efficiency. Climate change, I don't need to emphasize this any further. It is making a physical impact on all of us. If we were not relying on artificial means for cooling this place, we would be sweltering by now, because that's the kind of heat that we are experiencing for the last 1 year or so. I mean, this has increased. All of us are feeling that impact. Everybody is taking notice of what the impact of this particular climate change is going to have on their businesses, on their lifestyles. One example I quote, and this is something which is a reverse moon analogy, and it goes for all of us. The moon analogy was, one small step for man is a huge step for the mankind, is the famous words. The reverse moon analogy is, one huge step for man is going to be one small step for the mankind. We have to change our lifestyles completely in order to meet those targets. And believe me, it's not going to be easy on all of us. So, point is, it's physical, it's there, we can all feel it. And therefore, the impacts have to be mitigated. And therefore, various schemes are announced. Why are these in place? We all feel that Green Plan 2030, how are we going to take it? How are we going to manage to get those numbers in? How are we going to meet those targets? Well, if we don't meet the targets, we can easily forget 2045. If we do exist by then. Not painting a sordid picture here, but that's really the reality that we're going to face. So some of the areas where energy efficiency has been taken to a very high level is the MEI regime that is going to come in, which is going to make it more and more difficult for building owners, developers to really get by with basic energy efficiency plans. It has to be done on the ground. Impact has to be felt on the ground. So I'll not belabor these points, but essentially there are quite a few regulations, quite a few recommendations which are coming in from multiple agencies, and there is, as I mentioned, there is also a carrot. There are these various schemes, there are grants which are available, which are a necessary point of policy. I'll skip 1 or 2 slides because I'm running out of time. But essentially, what are we looking at in terms of net zero 2050 and energy efficiency being a core lever for all of us is the status quo analysis, which is generally the first step. We analyze the baseline of it. Then we go into the decarbonization pillars, and this is where we as KPMG have come across multiple pathways. But the most urgent next step is always, by default, energy efficiency. Because that's the low-hanging fruit in your control. I can immediately get my chillers into an energy as a service model and make an impact on my savings. So those are the low-hanging fruits which are available. And that's where the goals will become more and more achievable through practical means. The roadmap, the long-term plan, and then we have the various scenarios. So we will not go into any of, these in detail, but essentially these are the 4 stages, how we look at it. And then I want to leave you with this particular slide, where we have lots of areas, pathways, which are available to us. But what is really pointing out over here is that pink part, which is the strategic energy management. This is where we are looking at energy efficiency as a strategic tool, instead of it being an afterthought when our energy bills are going off the roof. We start looking at energy as a much more strategic resource. With that, thank you so much. I have a lot more slides, but I'm going to cover only this much today. Thank you.